Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and the New York Knicks may never get a chance to go to the finals like this again, especially in the Jalen Brunson era. The Eastern Conference is wide open right now. I think they had an amazing offseason, and they showed huge growth last season that I believe will build into this year. They're one of the favorites to win the East. They're one of the favorites to win the championship outright. There is real reason to be optimistic about the Knicks, but this is a chance they have to seize. If they blow this one, like I said, they may not get a chance this good again for a very, very long time. So let's talk about why the Knicks could potentially make it to the finals this year and why they kind of have to go ahead and get it done now. Starting off with talking about where they were last year, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, lost to the Pacers, a red-hot team that had one of the most absurd comebacks I've ever seen. Game one, I believe it was, where Nesmith hit like those 5 threes. Tyrese Halliburton, of course, hits the shot to send it to OT, hits the choke sign. The Pacers were just the team of destiny out east. And the Knicks, they rallied, they fought back, like they didn't, just roll over and die, but they were just outmatched by the depth of the Indiana Pacers and just the overall level of play. So the Knicks bow out in the conference finals, but losing in game 6 there is a great step. Like, that is great progress to go ahead and show. And along the route to getting there, they knocked off the Boston Celtics, who basically nobody gave them a chance against, me included. Like, I didn't change the title of it. You can go back and look at my series preview. It's titled something like, "Do the Knicks have any chance of upsetting the Celtics?" or something like that. And the answer is yes, they did. And they did it pretty convincingly. Sure, Jason Tatum gets hurt, but I don't think Tatum's injury ultimately made a difference. The Celtics were going down 3-1 anyways, and the Knicks just looked like the better team pretty much all throughout that matchup. They erased multiple 20-point deficits. Brunson was unstoppable in the clutch. Huge defensive plays from Mikal and Anunoby. Everybody produced. Just a really great run for the Knicks to go ahead and make it to that point to knock off a team as good as Boston. And now coming into this year, not only do I think they got better, but those two teams that they, played their second 2 series against are out of the picture. Indiana is still going to be solid. Like, there is still a lot to like about them, but without Tyrese Halliburton, I think Indiana is a play-in, maybe even outside of the play-in team, depending on how much they're willing to just go ahead and sacrifice the season to build towards next year. And the Celtics, without Jason Tatum, like, they're also not much of a threat, and even less so because they dealt away Porzingis. No more Drew Holiday. So their top 2 competitions throughout that playoff run are out. There are still some really good teams, but that is a big wall removed for the Knicks. Right now, it's mainly the Cleveland Cavaliers, and if you ask me today, I think Knicks-Cavs is the conference finals that I'm expecting, and I think that'll be a 6-7 game series. Right now, if you ask me, I lean Cleveland because I'm a big believer in them still. I'm not at all out on them, but you could convince me the Knicks could go ahead and get the job done, especially because, going into the season, Max Strus is out for a bit. Darius Garland, his status is up in the air, of course, still recovering from that toe injury that limited him in that series against Indiana that Cleveland lost, and they have had some issues sometimes performing in the playoffs. Like, there is some stuff to be a little bit concerned about with Cleveland. They're definitely not a perfect team, and that could even allow the Knicks to go out there and grab the 1 seed over the course of this regular season, because last year they racked up regular season wins. When you have a player as good as Jalen Brunson, who was All-NBA, and Karl Towns, who was, I think, having his best individual season last year, Mikal Bridges, Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, like, that top 6 right there, top 7 if you had Deuce McBride, is one of the best in all of basketball. But now they add some more depth that is even more critical to winning more regular season games and winning late into the playoffs. You need a really good deep team. We saw that this year with the Pacers and the Thunder, the 2 NBA Finals teams. Both of them were incredibly deep, from 1 to 11 and 12 if you really had to go that far. You need not just good role players, you need high upside role players. And I think the Knicks added those types of guys over the course of this summer. Biggest addition, my favorite one, is Guerschon Yabusele, who was really good for the Sixers last year, brought a lot to the table as a defender, as an outside shooter. Of course, those were things that helped him make his NBA comeback. And I think here in New York, he could get some starts. And if he's not starting, then he is a great piece to have in that front court that gives him a little bit more size that I think they could kind of use next to Karl Towns or Mitchell Robinson. I think Yabu is a really good Swiss Army knife type of piece for Mike Brown to have in his arsenal. Jordan Clarkson is a spark plug they didn't have last year. here. Off the bench, Deuce McBride can have some solid scoring games, but he's not the scorer that Clarkson is. And Clarkson's not the scorer that he himself used to be, but he can still, go into a game and give you 20 points, 25 points, 30 points. There is a chance they can win a playoff game purely because Jordan Clarkson goes out there and just has a really, really solid night to boost them up if Brunson or Cat or someone else on the team that they rely on for offense is kind of struggling. And that's not something they had last year. Last year, if Brunson or Cat struggled, they were in a really, really difficult spot unless you got one of those rare, like Mikal Bridges pop-off games. And now you've just got another guy you can rely on. If he's not very good, he hasn't been great the last few years in Utah, then at the very least, you still have him as an option, and you can hope and pray that there are some nights where he showcases some of that. He's a better option than Cameron Payne or Landry Shamet, who they were forced to play minutes last year. Malcolm Brogdon, who they go ahead and bring in, I like a lot. He's dealt with a lot of injury. There have been a lot of ups and downs since he left Boston, but I think there is still legitimate, real upside with Malcolm Brogdon here if he can stay on the court. And he gives them another playmaker, which is something they could use, a guard with a little bit of size. Last time we saw him actually, sustainably out there, he was incredibly efficient too. Maybe those days are past him, but again, you're just taking swings, and if you get even a semi-decent version of Brogdon, he's much better than almost any option you had last year coming off your bench. Even Garrison Matthews, pretty solid pickup. And so ultimately, the Knicks now have 8, 9, 10 players that I feel somewhat comfortable with them playing. Maybe not always in a playoff setting. Maybe they still limit it to at most an 8-man rotation, but that's the way a lot of playoff teams do it anyways. But at least now there are options. There are more weapons to throw out there. You're not pigeonholed into being okay, someone's struggling. We have 2 guys who actually can play and feel somewhat confident that they can do something. So the Knicks got deeper. I think they got more talented, building off the already really talented core that they have. Their top group of Brunson and Mikal and OG and Towns is one of the best in the entire NBA. I know there are ups and downs offensively for Mikal and OG, and they do need to be more consistent, especially in the playoffs, for the Knicks to not just win the conference, but win the finals, because you play the Thunder, a really good defensive team there, or you're trying to keep up with the Nuggets offense or a great defensive team in the Rockets, any of those squads, you're going to need just ridiculous levels of play from everybody. There has to be high-level offensive execution. And so, yeah, you do just need those guys to be better, but another year of continuity, figuring out this Knicks system that they're in, which is going to change a bit with Mike Brown. I'll talk about him in a moment, but just getting more acclimated to this environment and playing off of each other, I do expect more consistency from those guys. And again, now, if you're not getting it, you have other options that you can kind of turn to. I'm super interested to see where Mike Brown goes with the starting lineup. I think Josh Hart should not start. I think Josh Hart should be a bench guy. His lack of shooting and sometimes unwillingness to take those threes, and also defensive lapses that do exist with him, kind of make him a little bit of a weak link in that starting lineup at times. I much prefer when they go Brunson, Mikal, OG, Cat, and Mitchell Robinson. I think that added size, that rebounding is really, really lethal. And then, Mikal or OG guarding 2s and 3s, I think they're really well suited for that. Cat gets to play that 4 spot like he did in Minnesota, where he held up defensively. That's kind of the lineup that I look. Mitchell Robinson is very injury prone, so I'm sure they're not going to be able to run that all the time. But I think there's also a world where you start Deuce McBride. Again, I think you could start Yabu at sometimes. They have a lot more options than just, they're hey, I guess we got to go to the default if the option that we want is not there. So a lot more depth, a lot of top tier talent. I mean, I think Brunson is top 10 in the league. He's one of the most dynamic scorers in the world. He is limited, of course, defensively. Same thing with Cat, which is the question mark for this team. How are they going to perform defensively? And I do think, putting a Deuce McBride or a Mitchell Robinson or a Yabu, one of those guys in the lineup in place of Josh Hart, can definitely help them improve on that end. Also, Mike Brown, coming in as a head coach, is a defensive guy. At least that's always kind of been the identity that people have tied to him. There were some not great defenses in Sacramento, but they also really didn't have the personnel. And in New York, he's got Mikal, he's got OG, he's got Mitch, Deuce McBride. There are real legitimate good defenders, 2 great defenders on this roster, which Sacramento really didn't have. So I'm hopeful that he can figure it out a little bit. I still do think when you get to the playoffs, there's not a lot you can do when you have weak links the way that Brunson and Cat are on the floor. But if you can bring your offensive ceiling up enough, we've seen teams with lackluster defenses make it work. The Nuggets last year pushed the Thunder to 7 despite a really lackluster defense because they were able to scheme extremely well because they had smart players. They had, David Adelman, who I thought did an incredible job coaching that team and putting guys in spots to succeed. I think the Knicks could also also have a relatively similar moment where they've got one of the best offenses. They go into the playoffs and it's like, how is this defense going to work? But they're able to scheme enough to the point where that offense can take them over the top, even if there are those lapses. And ultimately, they can just be a better defense when the game slows down like that, because I do think a slower half-court setting could play into this Knicks defense a lot more than sometimes, a more run and gun regular season matchup that you see typically. On that offensive end, I do think Mike Brown has a little bit of a challenge there. They need to be better. They need to be more dynamic. There were too many times in the playoffs where it felt like it was like, okay, Brunson, now it's your turn, or Cat, now it's your turn, or Mikal Bridges is going to take a long mid-range jumper for some reason now. I think there is just too much offensive talent, especially between Brunson and Cat. I mean, those are two of the top offensive players in the sport. You gotta just make things happen for them more. You gotta have more synergy there, more cohesion. And Mike Brown did a great job with that. With De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis in Sacramento, they became, under him, one of the best offenses in the sport when they went on that run, one of the top seeds in the Western Conference. So I'm interested to see if he can pull something similar off, build more of a synergistic relationship between Brunson and Cat, because there's way too much here to have some of the offensive possessions we saw last year in the playoffs under Tibbs. And I didn't love the Tibbs firing. I felt like it was a little bit premature, but clearly the Knicks recognized the opportunity that is in front of them, how open the East is, how talented they are, and they felt like they needed to make the best move for them to try and get over that hump. And I do think Mike Brown is capable of that. I don't think he was at all the reason why the Kings struggled last year. I mean, you saw that down the stretch. I just think it's a team that doesn't play defense, that can't really shoot. Like, there are big issues with the Sacramento Kings. In a more talented spot here in New York, I think Mike Brown can succeed in a very, very big way. And if he can get some of that guard big play between Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, and even a little bit with Mitchell Robinson as that lob threat, a guy in the offensive glass, they can really bang on the boards, be that kind of physical, get extra possessions type of team that we've seen them be. Like, what is stopping this Knicks team from making it to the NBA Finals? The Cavs are really good. Teams like the Magic and the Hawks and maybe the Sixers and the Pistons, like, there are really solid teams that have a lot of upside in the East. But this team, top to bottom, is one of the most talented. Brunson and Cat are going to be top two of like the three best players in pretty much any series that they play in. And I think Mike Brown's a really good coach, and they've got more depth now. Like, there is a lot to really like about this Knicks team the more that I think about it. They could win the Eastern Conference. Beating whoever comes out of the West is a whole nother challenge. But if you can make it to the finals, theoretically, you can win the finals. This is a team that's capable. They're right there in that championship contender tier. They're probably like my last team in that tier. It depends. I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about the Rockets now that they lost Fred VanVleet. I still think that is a bigger blow than people realize, but we'll have to see what Reed Shepard can do and stuff like that. I already talked about that in a video, but yeah. Like, they're there. They're in that conversation. And last year, it felt like they were up there too. I think I had them losing to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals when I made my preseason predictions. So I had them in that contender conversation, but it feels like this year, the chance is better than ever. When's the next time they're going to get a team this talented with this wide open of an Eastern Conference while Brunson and Cat are at this level? They're both playing the best basketball of their careers right now, or at least they did last season. I'm expecting it to carry over. Like, when are you going to get that again? I don't think you're going to. This is their chance. If they want to go ahead and make it to the finals, they want to win the finals, now's the chance to get it done. Go ahead and showcase why they spent so much money on this team, why you gave up all these assets for Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges. Like, why you assembled this squad is to win a championship, to bring a title back to New York, and I think they've got a shot to do it. If they don't do it this year, then, you risk Jason Tatum coming back next year in the Celtics. Brad Stevens is so good at just re-upping on talent. He's going to find a way to for the Celtics to be insane again. The Pacers are getting Tyrese Halliburton back, and that in and of itself is absolutely terrifying. The Cavs, if they win it this year, like, they're young, they can only get better from here. Evan Mobley is rapidly ascending, and they still have a ton of room to make swaps if they lose in the playoffs this year. Like, they can adjust pretty quickly. The Magic are rapidly on the rise. The Pistons are rapidly on the rise. But right now, like, the Magic might still be a year away. The Pistons might still be a couple of years away. Who really knows? Like, that's your competition right now. And everybody's kind of in this weird limbo, except for like you and maybe one or two or other teams. So can they capitalize? We'll have to wait and see. But I think there's a shot they win the NBA Finals this year, and especially a shot that they win the Eastern Conference. So yeah, I'm excited about the Knicks. I think there's going to be a lot of good things going on at Madison Square Garden this year. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on New York. Do you agree with me that they had a great offseason? How do you feel about them defensively and offensively going into the season? What things does Mike Brown need to do? Do you think this is a championship level team? Yes or no? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, but for right now, I appreciate you watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all later. Real one, save back.